Frank, I counted on you. Okay, the meeting.
I always forget to do it too, so Mary Jo, there's always somebody reminding me halfway through the beginning of the meeting.
I think I got spoiled by Michelle. Okay, it's 1:05 p.m. It's the Community Connectivity Grant Committee special meeting of June 22nd. It's being recorded on WebEx, and we have present myself, Mary Jo Nozel, Eric Olson, Frank Pappalardo, Jim Lampos, Kurt Procherena from BSC, and Bonnie Reemsnyder will not be joining us. I don't know if Tim's on. Tim, are you on? Not yet. I know he had planned to join us too. So thank you, everybody. And again, happy belated Father's Day, everybody. I was hoping you guys would allow me the opportunity, and Kurt, if you feel like you don't need to be part of this, that's fine. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to, because I'm sure we'll have some questions for you. But
yeah, I'll just stand by.
Okay.
If you have questions, but reach out. Otherwise, I'll stand by.
Okay, thanks. I just felt like our June meetings, I kind of felt myself personally kind of off track. We've had some really productive meetings thanks to BSC, but I feel like this might be a time to do a nice roundtable, a review of where we were when we started just over a year ago and where we are now, so that we can make some final decisions to help BSC. Recognizing our grant, our construction grant of $400,000. So as Eric put it succinctly, I think at our last meeting, it's a numbers game. But I also thought, I came away after our last meeting, and I'll be quite honest, when I'm taking notes, sometimes it's hard for me to participate in the meeting. So sometimes it takes me a few minutes after I'm doing minutes to say, oh, well, I didn't think about that, or I have this question. So I hope you guys will be okay if we take the first part of this meeting to kind of review where we've been and then hopefully go forward. And I thought the way I'd start is to kind of review our minutes, just some key points from our past minutes to refresh our memories. I know I needed this. So going back to last April of 2019, the charge of the committee, the construction, and I'm just going to quote from our minutes. The construction funding is through a new state program designed to streamline connectivity projects of this nature, safety, bike, pedestrian. The application described the need for construction funds to develop the gateway to Soundview Beach and to improve safe access to the beach with streetscape improvements, including new sidewalks, curbing, and amenities for Upper Hartford Avenue, and if feasible, to the north-south of Route 156. Just a highlight. Last November, was kind of reiterated. Kurt joined us. He reviewed the purpose of the community connectivity grant through CONDOT to continue to make safe connections from the end of the first project at Bocce Lane on Hartford Avenue with sidewalks on the west side of Hartford Avenue. Also to design a sidewalk for safe access on Shore Road north side, which makes a connection with Hartford Avenue and the parking area near the police station. Business should also benefit. Kurt noted that BSC will run the auto turn program for the 156 Hartford Avenue corner to determine the safe turning radius. And BSC plans to blend in to not cause drainage problems. We've been specifically talking about the butchers during that conversation. Going back to May of 2019, one of our points was the design priority is the sidewalk on west side of Hartford Avenue, from Bocce Lane to Route 156, and the small sidewalk around the corner in front of the mini mart. The committee would like to include some place marking for the entrance to Soundview, for example, landscaping. There was consensus that concrete driveways be requested, which would be safer, better for maintenance, and align with previous work. Include quality control measures for concrete testing. If anyone has any questions, feel free to stop me. Otherwise, I'll keep going. August 2019, there was discussion on the merits of a full design plan, which included work on Route 156, and to consider requesting an additional town funding based on the bids if the request did not exceed $20,000. Last September was discussed at the Board of Selectmen meeting of September 3rd. That the Board of Selectmen approve a motion to request an additional appropriation from the Board of Finance, which would allow for the full design of the Gateway Connectivity Project. This is where I volunteered Frank to speak at the Board of Finance meeting, just so you know, Frank. The CCGC reviewed the merits of requesting an additional appropriation of the Board of Finance, which included providing a safer walkway for the numerous summer pedestrians, a safer traffic flow, fully expending the construction grant of $400,000, and to have a plan that residents and businesses on Route 156 could refer to in planning for property improvements. Last February of this year. We were talking about the drone technology that the SE was going to use. Kurt stated that the goal is to demonstrate a high level of care for these property owners. That was referencing the folks were concerned with on Hartford Avenue. Last April, but some properties, particularly those closer to Bocce Lane, have significant topographical changes which require a higher level of detail. The goal is to make sure that our new work interfaces with the existing properties in a seamless and aesthetically pleasing manner, and the elevation differences do not have a negative impact on properties. And that was also where Frank talked about Tim getting a verbal agreement with ITSE to do the transportation center. This is our reference to our May meeting where there was consensus that by the CCGC that the design looked very nice, and just recollection that was the report Jesse had shared with us, the monolithic sidewalk graphics. This is our meeting of June 8th. This is something happened between our meeting of June 2nd and June 8th. And you know, Frank, this is where I kind of felt like I lost the train of thought. This is where on June 8th, you had sent that week an email that you reviewed with the committee requesting that we really work very hard to get Shore Road done, that you felt there was a great deal of community support for this. So just to set the stage. And then we had some discussions on Kurt's concern about the cost for some of the other things we were looking at, but that we had to do the driveways, we really didn't have an option. And that Kurt felt generally less is more regarding the transition space. So he was saying a grass slope for these properties would be acceptable, but that he had, concerns with the cumulative project cost for the non-sidewalk elements. Then, I think you guys know where we were after that. So for me, it helped going through that again. And I'm hoping that will help with the next phase on this. It seems to me that we've gone from a plan where we had emphasized the work on Upper Hartford Avenue for the grant and the connection around the mini mart and some place marking. And hopefully, if we had enough money, we would have room to as much as Shore Road as we could, but certainly finish the design, maybe go out for some additional grants. I did talk with state this week between our last meeting and this meeting. Craig Babowitz, who's the contact. You may have met him, Frank, when you and Bonnie went to the training on this. Yeah. I've never met him, but I asked if there was any other money available since we were getting some preliminary cost estimates that overshot our $400,000 construction grant. And he said they've gotten this request from other towns, but no, under this program, it's like a one-shot deal. He said LoCIP might be coming back. So, we thought the steep grant might be another option, but under this program, unless another town decides not to go forward with construction, which at this point, all the towns have planned to use their funding, there is no other funding under this plan available. So I was hoping that maybe we could, before we did anything, cut back to see if there was anything else. And apparently there is not under this. I asked about what he's seeing on construction bids. He said, and I think Kurt told us this a few meetings ago, the bids continue to come in either at or under estimate, which was very nice to hear. He said Portland actually, their project, and I don't know the details of their project, he said Portland's bid came in about half under what they estimated. So I mean, that's interesting. So anyway, that's my summary of where we were. And does anyone else want to add to that? If not, I have some questions I wanted to ask.
I think you pretty much summed it up well, Mary Jo. I mean, it's all part of the record. So.
Okay. All right. Jim or Eric, I don't mean to monopolize the conversation.
No, that's definitely a good recap of where we've been.
Thank you.
I agree. I mean, you summed up everything from my memory as well. So I think we're all on the same page.
Okay. Thank you.
The only thing I might say is that the discussion with Shore Road, was always kind of with the back thought that all the preliminary estimates during the beginning interview stage was that Shore Road was a very doable thing, and this project was not that as an extensive of a project, and there shouldn't be any reasons why we shouldn't be able to accommodate Shore Road. I think that's the only thing that has kind of like been lost in the weeds there, but that was part of that has always been part of the conversation, I think.
Yeah, I think the hope was, and we certainly did this in the interviews, the hope was that 400,000 would allow us enough to do all or most of Shore Road. And that was the feedback that we got from the interviewing firm. So I think I totally agree with you, Frank, on that. However, before we went to that stage, it appears we had quite a lot of discussion on what was the priority. And the priority to me, from everything I've read, was Hartford Avenue, making sure we do no harm, making sure it's connected to the Lower Hartford Avenue project and aesthetically pleasing. So I wanted to ask some other questions, and these are not in any order, and this could be for the committee or Kurt, if you'd like to jump in. 82,000 from Kurt's estimate seemed to be the cost of the aesthetics or the improvements part on Hartford Avenue, other than the sidewalk and the necessary driveway work. If we eliminate the improvements from the plan for cost savings now, what do we lose in the long term, say 10 years from now? You have a thought on that?
I've been driving around looking at similar layouts of sidewalks where you have bituminous curb, grass, sidewalk, and then grass. And it really depends on the property abutter. Some of them are a complete disaster where there's, it's all chewed up. Work crews have gone in, to do road work and not dressed it up, and no one's cared about it. Grass doesn't get cut. Hartford Avenue in general, I think people, care about their properties. They try to keep them up. They probably will keep them up, but I think if we don't button it down and have, a coherent edge on that sidewalk that meets the street, 10 years from now, it could be anything. And the reason that I like the monolithic sidewalk in general is that if we look at the Easy Mart corner, the gateway as the entrance to Soundview, as you look down that road, you want to draw the eye down and make it inviting. I assume that once coronavirus is over, we're going to get rid of that horrible highway sign that we have down there. We're going to get rid of that fencing. We can do something about those garbage cans. We can open up that streetscape again, because that is unique. As you drive by, you look down and say, boom, there's the water. And if you have an inviting gateway with this inviting sidewalk bringing you down into Soundview, I think it just brings the whole place together. It makes it a moment that when you're passing by, it's not just another little, crappy little, development somewhere. That it's a place. So I think that's what we lose if we don't do the monolithic sidewalk. Is it a deal breaker? No. You have these examples everywhere. We're going to have it on Shore Road. It's not it's not the end of the world, but I do think that Hartford Avenue is our focus. I think we should do it right. I think we should have it be of a piece with the rest of the project, if possible. And maybe this is a discussion a little further down, but looking at the numbers, preliminary numbers that Kurt came up with, even if we do bare bones on Hartford Avenue, no aesthetic improvements, just the minimum that we can do, we still don't hit our number. And we're still looking at cutting on Shore Road. And I didn't see a lot of fat in the design on Shore Road that we can say, okay, we can see, I know Kurt has some cost savings in his pocket that he's going to present to us, but we're still going to be at or above our number. And that's a dangerous place to be, because as we know, the estimates are the estimates, but you always get something. And if you're planning to be at your total project cost, you're going to be running over. So I'd like to think about Hartford Avenue being done as well as we can do it, and then seeing what portion of Shore Road we can do comfortably. And I think that's the way we're thinking about it in the beginning, that we may not be able to do the whole thing on Shore Road. And again, maybe this is a discussion a little further down, but if I was to do a focus on Shore Road, I would focus more towards connecting with Cross Lane, because that opens up that whole area of the Cross Lane Firehouse where people go to vote, the fields there, the school, the existing sidewalks. Going in the other direction, I don't see the transportation center happening anytime soon. I sort of threw that out there in the beginning to see if it could be part of the design process. Maybe it would be the village center with, some kind of signage, some kind of artwork, blah, blah, blah. But now we're talking about a gravel road and a bus shelter. So it's not going to look good the way we're conceiving it now. And there's probably going to be the staging area for the sewers later. So that's so far down the road. Doing a transportation center, it's really not part of our project right now. And if I was to give something up in this project, it wouldn't be the aesthetics on Hartford Avenue. It would be going east from Hartford Avenue, because if we just land it sort of at what was Pizza Plus, that's pretty much the foot traffic. Dimitri doesn't get a lot of foot traffic. He's mostly, he provides services. He goes out to people. And then you have the lot, and then you have the police station. So the businesses are mostly to the west, and the connections to the rest of the town facilities are to the west. So that's my perspective on it.
Thank you, Jim.
This is Frank. You know, not to throw a lot of cold water on that thought process, Jim, because I do agree with you. Aesthetics are important and kind of a focal point is important. I think we kind of go back to the beginning that the project is for safe pedestrian and traffic patterns for the Soundview area, which includes Shore Road. I think that I'm less concerned about people upkeeping the grass on that 1 foot, 2 foot buffer strip. They mow their lawn now. We have very, very few incidences of people not mowing their lawn. It's a very well kept up community. So I don't see that as being a real problem. I think the safety aspect is very important. And then if you want to start looking at aesthetics, I think our biggest aesthetic problem is Shore Road. It's a hodgepodge. It's a mess. And from the Soundview Commission standpoint, I've been getting, I've gotten complaints on Shore Road for years about all the signage and, cars pile up and driveways all over the place and illegal signages. I think Shore Road really is the beginning of a focal point of Soundview. And I think that's incredibly important as part of this project, especially from an aesthetic part of this project. Just cleaning that up, I think, will be critical in making this project a much better approach to Soundview. The next part is regarding the transportation center. Now, the transportation center is not going to cost the town anything, and yes, it may just be a gravel road right now with a bus shelter on it, but it is the beginning. It's a starting point for something. We have the opportunity right now to get the gravel road put in for nothing. It's likely we could probably get bus shelter. It keeps people off Route 156 waiting for the bus. Once again, another safety issue here. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about safety and connectivity. And if we can, build that into the project, which we can, it's not a big deal. All Kurt has to do is design a road and Mezzi Construction will put it in for us. I think that's also critical. I don't see any reason why that should be taken out of the package. It doesn't cost us anything. And it's definitely part of the safety issues and part of the connectivity. It's a different type of way of getting people in and out of the Soundview area that doesn't include cars. And I think that's critical. I think that just by cleaning up the side of the road, putting in a sidewalk in, new curbing with standardized driveway cuts, with curbing going around the driveway cuts, I think that in and of itself will be a major improvement. And then obviously cleaning up Shore Road. The other thing I'm going to look at too is that sewers will be coming down the pike at some point in time. And I think, it'll be a lot easier and safer and cheaper to put the sewers in underneath an asphalt curb and just a sidewalk slab rather than a 7 or 8 foot chunk of sidewalk there. Not that I'm advocating that as the reason, but I just think that from a logical and from a practical standpoint, that would be an easier approach for them. Also, be less costly in terms of the overall construction of the sewers. So I am definitely focused on making Shore Road, which is the beginning of the gateway to Soundview, an integral part of this project. And as long as we don't have to take away any of the safety improvements that we're talking about, and we do no harm to the properties, I'm willing to sacrifice some of the aesthetics on Hartford Avenue. As much as Mary Jo knows this, I mean, I'm definitely about aesthetics. I like making it look pretty, but I think that that extra amount that we're looking at here with the stamped concrete and everything really is not as necessary as we may think it is. I think the grass strip will be more than adequate. People will be able to mow it. I don't see any problem with upkeep on that at all. So once again, I think Shore Road is and by the way, Shore Road is where we got some of our strongest support. Teddy and all the people. I have people calling me up from Old Lyme Shores and from Old Colony Beach, wanting us to extend the sidewalk on Shore Road all the way down to Old Lyme Shores. So that just tells you that there's a broader community support for sidewalks on Shore Road. And I think that to pull that out of the package is a major mistake on our part.
I didn't hear Jim saying pull it out of the package. I thought I heard him say.
I didn't say pull it out, but sacrifice some of Shore Road for aesthetics on Hartford Avenue. I think would be I would be not in favor of that.
Okay. Eric, do you have any comments, or should I go on?
No, I don't have any skin in the game as far as I don't live down there like Frank and Jim do, and involved in the commission and in that aspect. So I'm looking at it as a person that lives in town who does go down Hartford Avenue, to the ice cream shop with kids and whatnot. So I look at it now when I go down there, and obviously the upper end looks, hodgepodge because there's an old sidewalk, there's nothing, yada, yada, yada. We get down to Bocce and the new section that was done, and I don't look at the new sidewalks. I look at the buildings that are in between Bocce and the next road, Martino, whatever it is. And to me, that looks worse than what we're proposing to do as far as a nice concrete sidewalk with a grass strip. To me, that inviting some of those buildings, the shape that they're in. And I know that's a discussion, for a different time, but that's just my impression as I drive down Hartford Avenue and what I see. And it's a shame because some people do take pride in their house or their business down there, and others, to me, the impression is they don't. And I think it just doesn't lend itself to very inviting when you hit that section. That being said, we have $400,000 that the state wants to give us, and I am from the mindset of to get the most out of that we can, while doing it the right way, meaning safety wise, not making someone's driveway inaccessible, but getting the most that we can. And I, as a taxpayer, I would much rather see us get whatever 2,400 linear feet of sidewalk put in on Hartford Avenue and on 156 than only do Hartford Avenue with a nice stamped concrete brick looking thing and not have anything done on 156, because maybe there'll be a grant from the state, maybe there won't, maybe the town have to do it if we want to, and that's more money out of the from the taxpayer. So that's where I'm coming from. I personally think a nice 4 or 5 foot sidewalk is going to look nice with a grass strip and serve its purpose of safety and letting people walk, from Teddy's or wherever all the way down to the beach, than not doing that and cutting out portions of Shore Road just so we could have a nice brick stamp for people to put their garbage pail on. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate all your comments.
Add one other thing, Mary Jo.
Yes.
I know when we started this a year ago, it was just about Hartford Avenue, how the whole process started. And I get that. And it just, to me, I haven't lost sight of where we started. I think just as we had more and more discussions, and then when we were told that, hey, we might be able to do 156 as well with that money, I know our discussion changed somewhat of the path. And I don't think taking away, or maybe I should say at the beginning when it was just Hartford Avenue, I don't think, I wasn't thinking that it was going to be, I was just thinking concrete, because we had discussed that we weren't going to do the granite curbing like it was down lower with the bump outs and all that. So to me, it was more of just a sidewalk, and I think that cleans it up just as well. And serves and gets us to the safety issue that we're concerned about.
I was always, and you can go back in the minutes on this, I was always focused on the entire project. I was never in favor of making this a phase one Hartford Avenue, phase two Shore Road. This is a single phase project which included Hartford Avenue and Shore Road. Granted, we always looked at Shore Road as being, well, if we had to eliminate some sidewalk, maybe we could do it on Shore Road. And I think we already talked, we can eliminate that section of sidewalk between Swan Avenue and the police station to the tune of 20 some odd $1,000. But I mean, I think it's not necessarily an all or nothing, but I think we really need to put our heads together and figure out how we get this whole package completed for the $400,000.
Well, I think that's why I'm doing this, Frank. I appreciate the thought. I really think we need to make some hard decisions, and before we make those hard decisions, I think we needed to look at where we're at and ask questions before we cut anything. So that we're all on the same page, because right now, at last two meetings, I didn't feel on the same page. So, that's why I'm really, really happy everybody's speaking up. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mary Jo.
Maybe this is a question for Kurt. Kurt, are there any resiliency concerns that you might have if we reduce the scope of the project on Hartford Avenue?
Yep, and I'm assuming when you say reduce the scope, you mean eliminate the 2.5 foot concrete infill.
Yes, sorry.
Yep. From my experience, and again, I'm just speaking factually from my experience, completely neutral in the discussion as far as the feeling. I can only report, what we've seen in the past,
Yep.
Which puts me in a unique position where I'm your sounding board. I'm here to advise you and kind of tell you what I've seen so you guys can make the decision. So
I appreciate that, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Oh, sure. No, that's what I'm here for, and I'm absolutely happy to be part of it. We have seen in situations more often than not where the grass strip, some people call it a utility strip, some people call it a buffer strip. Ultimately, and there are many factors involved in every project is unique, obviously, but for the most part, we have seen a trend in municipalities eliminating the grass strip because of a few things. The town's maintenance departments find it difficult to maintain because it's not easy to mow. When you look at the equipment that most towns have, they have large, wide mowers that do not do well in a 3 to 4 foot strip. You've got the other facilities there, road signs, et cetera, which make it very labor intensive to mow the grass. They have to get off the mower, weed whack around the signs, or unfortunately, we've seen situations where that doesn't happen, and then you start to get growth around the signs and those things. And other things too, utility poles, mailboxes. Once you put the grass in there, we've gotten feedback that, oh boy, that's a headache for us because of the type of equipment that we have. The other thing we have noticed on projects is that because of where that grass is, particularly in a New England environment, road salts, it's not irrigated, so it's not the most hospitable environment for grass to grow, meaning it's between a road and the sidewalk, very high temperatures. It tends to get cooked in the summertime. And assume that, nobody is fertilizing it or taking care of it like you normally would a lawn, quote unquote. So it has a tough go. We're asking a lot for grass in that environment. We have also seen, and this tends to be more in high pedestrian traffic areas, where in addition to what I just mentioned, once you get a high degree of foot traffic, the grass gets trampled, and without it being irrigated and without other maintenance, for example, periodic fertilizing, periodic aeration, the grass tends to get trampled and the soil ends up being extremely compacted from foot traffic. Because inevitably, and again, this is mostly in areas where you've got a lot of foot traffic. Yukon is a good example where we've seen a fair amount of this. The students and people, they don't care if it's flat, they don't care if it's grass sidewalk, they'll walk through it. Well, believe it or not, without proper maintenance, and we've all seen what we call desire lines, right, where you have a sidewalk that tees in, and then you see the radius on either side where people take the shortcut. Always happens. We call those desire lines. And what do we see? We see a dirt path, because grass just can't withstand that trampling. So we have seen that happen. And then so what happens is the grass starts to die off, the soil gets compacted, and it ends up having a poor look. Weeds move in, crabgrass moves in. So we've definitely seen that. So for a long term, as you said, resiliency standpoint, I have seen the trend going to some sort of paver material. As an example, at Yukon, we did that infill strip, and it was with pervious pavers because they had a big push to reduce impervious area, but the goal of a lot of folks is no maintenance. We want something that's no maintenance. Our crews are already overstressed. We want something that's going to look good 10 years from now. And from an engineering standpoint, I always have to say, because then we get asked, what do you got? So I have to either say, well, you could go with straight up bituminous pavement. And believe it or not, some municipalities have actually done that. Doesn't quite look so nice. Or pavers or concrete is my default when they say, how do you make this, for lack of a better term, bulletproof? Concrete, right? You can't beat concrete.
First of all, I understand what you're saying. Okay, I'm not dense to the fact that the pavers or the concrete is a more maintenance-free type of thing. First, but in reality, people right now are mowing that. What leads us to believe that they're not going to mow it in the future? It's now part of their front yard, and there's many segments of sidewalk that still exist. They're mowing on both sides of that. So there's really no indication that people are not going to maintain that, number one. Number two is we're talking about foot traffic. In reality, first of all, it's a summer community, all right, in general. Foot traffic does not occur year-round. And when you look at the foot traffic on Hartford Avenue, the foot traffic we're looking at here occurs on Saturday and Sundays, very minimal on the weekdays. And it's only 6 to 8 weeks a year. So we're talking maybe 16 days of heavy foot traffic, if at all. 16 days out of 365. So, the whole thought process of compacted soil and everything it doesn't wash with me because of this particular location and the uniqueness of this site, which is far different than other communities that you maybe have done this work on. I just don't see that people abandoning a 2-foot strip of grass because it happens to the other side of a sidewalk. I can't see that. The people that live there maintain their properties very, very meticulously, and their front yards are minimal at best. So, I think that they're going to want to maintain this grass strip as part of their front yard. And once again, I think we're only talking about 16 tops heavy traffic days a year.
Yeah, and I'm neutral on both comments because once the project gets built as the designer, I'm gone. And so the operational things, and that's not to say I'm copping out, but that's something for the committee to talk about and as the designer, I can only, once we put the plans together and it gets built, when you transition into, I'll call, operations, maintenance after it's built, that's really where the committee takes over from me. So I'm neutral, on your points.
Frank, do you think that given that this would be new turf, it will be harder, like if it doesn't take or is burned out, as Kurt suggested, it could be. Do you think that the neighbors will ask the town to fix it?
Well, I think that we talked about sod as being a reasonable alternative to grass and seed because number one, it's there, it exists right away. So I think that we sod it. It's a 1.5 foot strip. Sod is not that much more expensive in terms of that in terms of anything else, and it'll probably be more likely to grow, and we'd have less likely problems with the contractor coming back and making the grass grow. We talked about that at a meeting earlier. But I think that if we put the strip down and it's sodded, I can't see a homeowner. I mean, I know most of the people on that side of the street. I know most of the people in Soundview. I can't see a homeowner saying, "I'm going to let the grass grow. It's not my problem." It's part of their curb appeal. It's part of their it's part of their property. They mow it now and they maintain it now. What makes us think that they're not going to maintain it in the future?
I'm sure, Frank. I don't want to belabor the point, but I'm sure that they will mow it. And I was saying that in the beginning. I have no doubt that the people of Hartford Avenue have pride in their property, especially on Upper Hartford Avenue, where you don't have the sort of real estate speculators that you do on Lower Hartford. You have homeowners who live there.
Right.
So I have no doubt that they'll mow it. But I think to Kurt's point, that section that's between the sidewalk and the road, it's sort of, it doesn't get abandoned, but it gets foot traffic, it gets the garbage cans on it, it gets road salt. I don't see people going out there and fertilizing it or watering it the way they would with the grass that goes up to the sidewalk. It's sort of, they'll go out and mow it, but they're not going to be like, super maintaining it the way they would their lawns. Here at my restaurant, for example, I was making a 20-foot buffer on my property from the road and put the sidewalk on my property in that 20-foot buffer. I maintain the landscaping, obviously. We cut the grass and we maintain it. We try to make it look nice, and we cut the grass between the sidewalk and the road. That grass is just impossible to maintain. Especially when you get into July, it's scorched. It looks crappy, and there's just not much that we can do apart from, putting in an irrigation system, which a couple doors down, Chelsea Groton does have, where they're watering the grass all night. That's not something that I can do for that little piece of property. But I have seen it, even on my property, which, I try to make look nice, and I try to make it be as inviting as possible on Route 1. And we don't have a lot of foot traffic on that sidewalk. There's actually very little. Most people drive. It's a very high traffic area here. I see that happening on Hartford Avenue, even if the homeowners have the best of intentions, even if they maintain it, just by the nature of it being sort of on the other side of the sidewalk. It's not going to be, fertilized and watered and taken care of the way they do their own lawn. It's like, they'll mow it and try to make it look decent, but I can see it looking a little crappy. And again, I'm sorry to take up so much time with this. It's not my intention to derail things, but
it's important, Jim. I think it's important. I think that if that becomes a problem, okay, that's where, if we're going to look for additional funding someplace, we look for additional funding for Streetscape, and then we put pervious pavers in that strip, which could always be done after the fact. Doesn't have to be a monolithic pour. It could be a pervious paver that they could be installed in that grass strip a year, 2 years, 10 years down the road, if that becomes a problem, and if the funding is available. I think that our funding right now should be focused on sidewalks and public safety and connectivity and that's where we need to keep it. Aesthetics are great, and I think the biggest aesthetic problem we have is Shore Road. And if we can correct that, I think that would go a long way.
I know you guys will move on in a second. Is there any liability to the town from your guys' perspective of people getting hurt on that strip, to caring for it, as you say, for example, Frank? And if, Kurt, if you have any experience in this, let me know. But do we have any liability concerns if we leave it natural?
I would say no more than we have existing right now. We have bits and pieces, chunks of old sidewalk and uneven ground, and driveway cuts that are all over the place that are town property that we know about, town right away. We're going to make it better. We're going to even it out. We're going to make it smooth. We're going to make it level. I don't see us as having a liability issue with that. That's personal opinion.
No, I mean, I think that's good. We're expecting these folks to take care of that strip. That's what I was envisioning. But I think your point's well taken, that we are proving some potential liability issues that I wasn't even thinking about. But just again, on that strip, do we have any concerns that the town needs to be thinking of if we don't concrete it in?
Well, I think it's on that point, Mary Jo, we're going to expect them to maintain the backside of that's on the town right away.
Yep.
So they could get hurt there too. And that's not even a discussion of what we're trying to plan. That's the plan. We're going to put grass there. We're going to have to maintain it. And if, it's the same, it'd be the same, I think, if there was concrete there. No matter what's there, somebody trips and falls, the town obviously is liable. It's the town's right of way, I guess, if no matter what's there.
That's stuff that keeps me up if someone trips and falls. Exactly.
Well, right. I mean, they could fall on the concrete and, sue the town. I mean, that could be the nicest concrete sidewalk in the world. I mean, obviously that's always a chance. People can walk on there now. It's town right of way. That's grass and trip and fall. And, it's this, to me, liability wise, I think we're no more liable if there's grass or if there's brick or if there's pavers or if there's nothing. Your liability to me is the same. Whatever we end up deciding to do, we also have to look at it as we're taxpayers of this town, and what would the town's people want to see this $400,000 do? Would they want to just see one section done with nice, stamped concrete, or would they like to see, hey, we got all of this with sidewalks put in with this limited amount of money? That's how I'm coming at it, as well as from a townsperson's point of view. What us as a committee of 4 or 5 of us have decided this money the town has given us. The state has given us, and being fiscally responsible with it and getting the most that we can out of it.
I think that's a valuable insight, Eric. Absolutely. That's why I'm glad you're on this committee. Okay. There was a discussion at our last meeting, and that's why I brought up the next question. Safety for pedestrians was the driver for Lower Hartford Avenue for 5-foot sidewalks. We had a discussion about possibly narrowing it to 4 feet if that would give us more money for Shore Road. I'm really uncomfortable on that. So with respect to safety, for transportation, and for pedestrians, and for homeowners' acceptance of the project, both below 156 and above 156, I'm uncomfortable reducing a sidewalk by 1 foot. Is there you guys have any more thought on that?
Well, Kurt, there was a question whether it was even possible or not, reducing it to 4 or 4.5 feet. I believe you had said that DOT would require the 5-foot on Shore Road as the base size, but there was even a question whether they would even allow us to do 4 or 4.5 feet on Hartford Avenue. Did you find the answer out to that, Kurt?
I I still have not been able to get a hold of anybody at District 2.
Can I butt in?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't get anyone from District 2, but I did mention that to Craig Babolitz, so thank you for bringing that up. He did confirm what you said, Kurt, that 4 or 5 foot is the DOT standard. 4 foot used to be the DOT standard, but for a variety of reasons, including ADA issues, the standard is 5 foot. We would have to make a big case to put before them to allow them to go down to 4 feet, amongst other things. That I guess there's lots of changes relatively recently, including mainly because of ADA accessibility and wheelchairs and things. So,
Big one.
yeah.
Well,
So
we said that if it's not possible, then, you know, I agree with you. If it's a safety issue, we stay with 5 feet. If it's a safety issue, if it's not a safety issue, then I'd look at 4 feet as being a possible alternative. But if you bring up the point of ADA and safety, then it's all about safety, you know.
absolutely, Frank. Now that was for Shore Road. I didn't ask specifically for Hartford because that's our town property. I asked for Shore Road, whether we could go down to 4 feet.
Does Ed, does Ed have any regulations on sidewalks? Have we discussed it with him yet? To find out whether he has a thought in one way or the other?
I talked to him briefly. I want to show him what, go up there because I did invite him to some of our meetings. He's a busy guy. Yeah, I'm sure he would have some opinions on this. So I'd like to show him, kind of what we decide and then let him weigh in on it. But I'm sure basically, he's down there more often than we are during the week and off season. So I think it'd be good to have his input.
And if I can chime in, I can confirm that the town of Old Lyme has standard drawings and your town standard is 5 foot sidewalk.
Thank you.
That pretty much answers that question. We're at 5 feet.
That settles it. I don't have an issue with, going to 5 foot, for ADA and safety. So that settles that, I think.
I think we should put a vote on that one because I'm feeling like as we make decisions, we got to help BSC and get stuff like motioned. Do I have a motion for 5 foot, at least a 5 foot sidewalk on Hartford Avenue?
I would make a motion that in compliance with the town of Old Lyme regulations and ADA, we vote a 5 foot sidewalk.
Second that, Eric. We'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Kurt, you got the first one. 5 foot sidewalk. Hooray!
And for your information, it's what the town of Old Lyme calls figure 17, dated June 1st, 2019, and it's called Standard Detail Drawing, Concrete Sidewalk, Regulations for Public Improvements, Old Lyme.
And just to cap it off, I had a landscape architect tell me that even for residential, for the front walk, they like to see 5 feet. So, when you're helping grandma down to the car, you have plenty of room on that sidewalk, for someone that's not even a wheelchair, but, just needs assistance in walking. So landscape architects like to see 5 feet, even in residential.
Great. Okay.
Do we need, kind of to Jim's point earlier, do we need to assume that we'll run into some concerns? I know one of our meetings, Frank asked you, Kurt, if you saw anything in your drone work, in your investigation, your field work that would concern you other than obviously the driveway issues. Do we need to do anything to allow for possible surprises?
Do you mean during construction, things that may come up?
Yes.
Yeah, that's always something that keeps me up at night as a designer.
We have a 10% contingency already built into the project costing, I believe, Hartford. That's what you
Yep.
said
Yes.
last week, yeah.
Because of the nature of the work, we're not going very deep. So issues such as shallow groundwater beyond what we've discussed, rock, those kinds of things, the probability of us running into something like that is very low because we're not going that deep. We haven't observed any utilities that are in the way. Does that mean there could be some hidden things or some oddball things? Of course, and that's always right, the surprises that get thrown at us. But you know, with the 10% contingency, which I recommend we continue to just carry right on through, my hope is that because of the nature of the work, fairly shallow, that that we won't run into anything. The work we're doing on the private property is mainly filling. So if you recall the driveways where we're creating that wedge of fill material with the driveway, that again lends itself to we're adding rather than going down, taking away. So the probability of something popping up gets lower in that regard. So there's really nothing that we've identified that jumps out as a significant concern. You know, the fire hydrants would be an example. We're just going to work around them. So could something pop up? Yes, but I think based on what we're seeing, the probability of that appears to be low.
That makes me feel better. Kurt, does your estimates include road striping for the bikeway?
I believe it does. Bear with me.
I have to ask that last week.
Yep. Yes, it does.
Oh, great.
Yes.
So my question, pardon me, at our last meeting, I think we were gonna go back and revisit the cost for just the sidewalk, with the new asphalt, bituminous asphalt curb, standardizing the driveways, using sloping and instead of, you know, flower beds and everything. And get the cost determination for that. And have you had a chance to do that yet, Kurt? That's
Yes.
kind of critical on the whole package here as to where we are.
Yes, we did revise the estimate. If you'd like, I can go through those now. I could actually share my screen.
Can I ask one question before you do that? And yeah,
Absolutely.
do your estimates include the trench drains we spoke of?
I
I don't know.
Yeah, that might not have made it into these yet because I may have to do a site visit to confirm the linear footage and the locations. It appears that it does not include the
That was
trench
maybe
drains now.
one or two properties, I think.
Yes, yeah, it could be up to 3 but yeah. The good news is not a big ticket item. The one caveat is making the connection to the drainage system. That's what I really have to look at. What does that entail? Because it will entail digging down. So anyway, I need to look at that in a little more detail to really make sure I'm capturing the scope of that work. You know, ideally we don't even use them, but as we had discussed, we have particularly the one property that in high storms is experiencing some gutter flow over the existing lip And to confirm, we will have a 1.5-inch lip at every driveway per town regulations. But over some storm events, the water does go above that lip.
Two quick questions, Kurt, before we get to the cost estimate. On Old Colony Road on the west side, I see there's an SNET 691. Is that a telephone pole?
Yes.
That appears to be right in the middle of the sidewalk. Is that going to be included in the estimate, moving that pole?
Let me look at that sheet. Bear with me for a second. And I apologize for the delay. If we were sitting together, I could just flip some sheets over, but I have to wait for the computer to load.
Maybe someday we'll be able to all sit in the same room. What do you think, Mary Jo? Possible?
Huh?
That would be nice. Sit outside.
Yeah.
Although I guess we'd have to come to your office and Jim's office, move around your offices. Eric, you and I might be on the road.
Well, we probably can at this point if we keep the meetings small, under 10 people, and we social distance and have our masks. We can probably actually meet in person at this point.
So Jim, you are correct. I think what happened was, if you notice on the other side of Old Colony, we have added a ramp and a landing, which we realize would be required if we bring the ramp to the edge of Old Colony.
Right.
But she forgot to change the alignment to both go around the pole and line up with the ramp. So yeah, that's right now.
Okay.
Right now we're going right through the pole, but the intent would be that it swings a little bit north, right around the pole to tee up nice and square across Old Colony to the landing on the other side.
Okay.
If we do indeed bring the sidewalk all the way to the police station.
Correct. That is correct. Yep. And just to note, one of the things that I'd like to get the permission from the committee today is to send these plans to CONDOT. Keep in mind that they'll do their review. They can start their review. It almost doesn't matter what the final length of the project is. In other words, they're not going to give us a hard time if in 2 weeks we say, oh, we decided to pull out this section. I would almost rather just get the plans to them, to Rick Chapman, who was the person down there that will review them, particularly because he has been non-responsive to me.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get something in front of them to almost force their hand. I will copy Craig Babowitz on the transmittal letter and then kind of pull him into the discussion and the process. And I did tell Craig that we were not able to get a response from the folks at District 2. Will he do anything? I'm not sure. I don't know. But yeah, so I would like to be able to submit these for their initial, what we call preliminary design review, but I will only do that with the green light from the committee.
Before we also share your screen, are these updates, do those also include dealing with some of the encroachments, a couple of encroachments we've talked about?
Yeah, the way that the plan set is structured now is the existing signs. I think at last count we had 4 or maybe 5. Would sort of follow DOT's kind of standard policy. They'll be removed and turned over to the property owner because they are within DOT's right of way. So that's how they deal with it. Yeah.
And that gets us out of doing code stuff. But on Hartford Avenue, we had a couple of, we thought the trees might not need to be cut back. Now, I did remember talking when I invited Ed Adante at one point, I mentioned that, and he said, well, if they're in the right of way, they should be cut. So he feels that we should go ahead and cut those. I know we're like hoping that if we don't have to do anything, that would be better. But
It doesn't have to deal with the people.
exactly,
So, I mean, you know,
exactly. Yeah.
Ed would pave the sand if he had the opportunity, so we don't have to worry about it, so.
It's good he hasn't stopped you yet. But also the fence work at that elderly couple's place, for example, removing it. I basically told him we'd put it back for. So I'm just wondering if that's included also.
Yes, I believe that is included. In fact, I think we have some special provisions in the drawing set, in the technical specifications for doing that work, and I will confirm. But yes, I believe that's in there. And again, we will follow the committee's lead as far as, you know, remove and reinstall, remove and store. Same thing with cutting the shrubs. You know, those are just call outs on the plan and some specifications. So from a design standpoint, very easy for us. You know, like you said, that probably a little harder for you as the committee because you've got to deal with the people.
Okay. Are there any other questions before I give it over to Kurt? I have some more for Shore Road, but I think I'll wait until we see what you got.
Okay. Yeah.
Make everybody aware of the time here. We've got about 20, 25 minutes here, so.
I know.
Okay. So can everybody see the cost table?
Yeah.
So this was essentially from our last meeting, the summary. So this is the new cost, 216,000, where we removed the 2.5 foot concrete portion of the sidewalk. We are removing the bituminous curb, reinstalling a new bituminous curb, 5 foot sidewalk, 2.5 feet setback from the curb. That allows us to essentially leave all the signs. I think we did still include the mailboxes. Yes, we did still include the mailboxes, but you know, that could be taken in or left out at the committee's discretion. Pretty much from back of sidewalk to the people's property, the project pretty much stays the same. Really, all these changes occur along that front edge. So we've come up with about a $94,500 delta with scaling it back in that regard.
This is Mary Jo. The estimate that we had last week said the Hartford Avenue, before we did the changes, was 303,750.
Yep, there was a few minor design detail elements as we continued to refine that made it go to the 310. Some of it involved the offsite work with some of the material as that got to a little more of a higher level of detail. We realized that some of that work was going to be a little more expensive than we thought. So this could go down a little bit, you know, as we hone in on a final design. It's every time we change something, we're tweaking it a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's why there's that difference. Apologize that I didn't call that out.
That's okay. You're trying to
about a $94,500 difference there. Of course, it's, you know, it's an estimate, but and then so if you look at an aggregate, I kept the 241,650 kind of where we stand today. And the big question on Shore Road is going to be, what does DOT come back with? Hopefully they come back and say, this is great. So that will be extremely interesting, right? To see what their comments are and what effects those comments have on our on our costs, which is why I'm so anxious to get these plans to them. So anyway, keeping that same cost, you can see the delta there, that we've shaved some off. 94.
We take off what Frank had estimated last time. The 20 grand, basically, we're more at like 440.
So actually, if that, your estimate there of 241, 650 includes moving a utility pole at Old Colony, that's a pretty substantial chunk of change. So that's going to skew that 100 feet rather than $200 a foot, maybe a little bit more than that for that 100-foot portion because that utility pole moved. So
Yeah, we're gonna go around the utility pole. And I apologize, okay, there we go. My screen just.
We're not moving it.
If you can you see this summary here?
yeah.
So this was just something that I was doing as I was working on the estimate. I broke it up, and this is very, I should call it conceptual, because if you recall, we had said based upon the length, which is at this point about 1,320 feet, it's about $200 a linear foot. So I just, for analysis purposes, just kind of did a quick calculation between the roads using the $200 a linear foot. And you can see the segment cost down here. I do need to stress that this is an average, and the reason it's variable is that, keep in mind, some segments between roads have more driveway entrances than others, right? Some of them we're reconfiguring. And because the sidewalk does not continue across driveways, it fluctuates. So each segment, but again, using the 200 as an average cost, it kind of shows you, for example, knocking off between Swan and Old Colony and whatever. We could get to a much higher level of detail if we get to that point, and what we would actually do is revise the line by line estimate to eliminate segments. That's a much more accurate way to do it. But this is kind of a quick summary level glance at what the segments cost.
So
I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, but
Yes.
we're really within $10,000, $17,000 of our target number. If you take that chunk of sidewalk out and change to the 5-foot concrete sidewalk only, so 44 from the 247, we're at 400,000, 417.
yep. So I'll show that right on the screen here. And if you subtract, so it definitely, every little bit helps for sure.
So we're within.
Eric, what's the difference? I'm sorry, what's the difference on Shore Road summary 264 total cost, and on Shore Road full concrete on that first column we have 241?
Yep, and that's basically what I was just saying. Using the 200 per linear foot, you're getting a little bit more of a conceptual cost, because the cost across the project varies. So if you look at the entire project, divide the length and the cost, that's where we came up with $200. Once you start to use that 200, which again represents a project-wide cost per foot, once you start to use it in individual segments, you introduce some error, because some segments in reality cost less than 200, some cost more than 200, and they may not necessarily cancel each other out. So what you're seeing there is the error that gets introduced into just using that broad $200. And that's where I was saying, if we really wanted to dial in, and we're happy to do this, if we really wanted to dial in getting rid of the Swan Avenue to Old Colony segment, we will do a new version of the estimate line by line and eliminate all the individual line items that are associated with that. And we'll get a much, much more accurate number. I think
Okay.
for today's discussion, this was just kind of a summary to show that, it's real money, right? It's real money. I should indicate, if you kind of look at the plans, if you look at the segment between Swan and Old Colony, it's probably your least expensive segment, right? Because if you look at what's out there, there's not much there. So in reality, that section is probably more along the lines of, $170 a linear foot, not 200. But again, as a quick exercise, so that's why you're seeing that difference, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
I think that probably we ought to look at the Shore Road thing so that you could get that in. So before we ask you to start to dial this stuff and drill down into the focus of each item, you got to be able to get an answer from DOT so you don't have to redo this again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in the meantime, I am happy to redo the estimate. Now that we have the estimate developed, it makes it pretty easy. I'm happy to redo the estimate, eliminating that segment and sending it out just so we can see what the real number is. And in the meantime, we'll patiently wait for DOT, but be interesting to see what that number is in reality.
And Kurt, in your experience with these projects before, because I mean, this is, I guess, would think like it's only 13, 20 feet. So not a large project. And if what Craig told me, that the construction folks are looking for smaller projects to keep them busy, that's why the prices have been coming in. I thought that was a good thing. But
yeah, that's definitely good news.
do you, how much for DOT surprises do we need to, like, we say we're very close to our number, but where would your comfort level be going into this DOT review?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I keep looking at the project, and as we were finalizing this design package with the estimate, I kept trying to identify what kind of things could DOT come back with that are curveballs, if you will. And it could be things such as drainage, which, boy, we sure as heck hope that they have nothing to say. But if they came back and said, well, now that there's a sidewalk there, we'd like you to relocate a catch basin or something, that would be quite a surprise, but it'd be inexpensive. Yeah. We know that there are potentially, and this is important to note, potentially some issues with cross slope at the intersecting town road. So if you recall, ADA maximum cross slope is 2%. The way that the federal ADA regulations are written, particularly when they address ADA in the public right of way, they tend to say run with the lay of the land, meaning, let's say you've got your road is on a hill and you want to put a sidewalk. Well, clearly you cannot make that segment of sidewalk ADA compliant because it's on a hill. So the regulations recognize that. You do the best you can. So one curveball that we hope DOT does not throw at us is that at each of these crosswalks where they cross the town roads, we hope that they don't say you need to saw cut out the end of that road and reconstruct it so it's less than 2%. That would be as you said, Frank, a deal breaker. That's a lot of work.
That's pretty unlikely, though. I mean,
I sure hope so.
they would have to have a pretty strong precedent for that to occur, and well, you'd know better than I would, but I can't see them making that a precedent over the state of Connecticut. That would be a deal breaker for so many projects.
Yes. Yes.
The only way we're going to know is to submit the plan and get a response.
That's
And
right. That's right.
we really can't go much farther until we get a response, really.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I look at, the other thing that they could throw at us right now, we've included everything as bituminous curbing. Some projects, and that was basically to save cost, and everything out there today is bituminous curbing. The two things, they could make us do some sort of concrete curbing proximal to the sidewalk. Some projects have that, but it's probably because they could afford it. It was built into it. It wouldn't be a huge item, but a bit of an annoyance because it would add. The second piece is, as you know, some segments of Shore Road do not have curbing. And we are leaving that alone. We are not proposing to add curbing to those segments. If they come back and say they want to add curbing, it's not a huge item again, but it's one more thing that now the town is spending money to put curbing on the state's road. Let's hope they don't come back with that.
Well, the state's going to be doing some major renovations on this road in 3 to 5 years, I believe. And I would find it odd that they would want us to make upgrades to it before they do the major renovations.
Absolutely. Right now, the state, as you know, has finished paving from the area of Rocky Neck all the way down to, I can't remember what the break point is. I think it's extended into Old Lyme on 156. The next project, which was supposed to be starting very soon, if not already, according to District 2, it's already in the queue and it's already on the docket as far as budget. They are paving from where that first project ended all the way up to the Baldwin Bridge. So that project is supposed to be happening at any time now.
I've seen some of the guys out there working, but they haven't done the Rocky Neck part to Old Line yet. So they're a little behind.
Okay. And he told me when I talked to him, oh boy, it seems like months ago now.
Yeah.
That, in fact, it wasn't even our primary contact. It was one of the people that I went through to find out who the primary contact was. Because of the whole COVID-19 thing, they've set that aside. And I said, no, that's fine, because it makes sense that all this stuff kind of be done in concert. And so I'm sure they'll look at that within the context of this project. And I actually hope that that's a good thing in this regard, right? The fact that they're doing a project gives them the opportunity to say, well, we'll take care of that when we come and repave the road and those kinds of things. So I look at that as a good thing.
You need from us an okay to send your plans to DOT for Shore Road.
Yes.
Is there anything you need to go over those plans with us now as we're collective before we vote on it, I guess?
I mean, I could. In reality, no. We've followed DOT's initial direction for what they wanted to see, and that's what we've based the design on. We've pretty much done a 3 to 4 foot buffer strip from the curb line or where there's no curb face of road, and then just run the sidewalk through. The sidewalk ends at all of the driveways. So in other words, there's not a flush sidewalk passing through the driveway, which is pretty standard, pretty typical. There are ramps and detectable warning panels at each driveway, which is pretty standard. One benefit, and this is one thing that DOT had brought up of pushing the sidewalk back, is there's absolutely minimal effect on any existing DOT signs. It also maintains a snow shelf and those kinds of things, which is why their standard is to kind of push it back. Couple of the driveways, and you've pretty much seen this already. We sort of haven't changed it since we looked at this last time. We've tightened up some of the driveways. That DOT said we don't like no man's land. So in response to that, we've given some defined driveways. I am certain that once we hear back from DOT, we will absolutely have a follow-up meeting where we discuss those in more detail. Very important from their standpoint. What do they think of what we've shown, and then how much in agreement with what we've shown are they going to be? They may have their own ideas. That, in my mind, that's one of the biggest reasons I want to get their feedback. For example, at Dimitri's, we've shown some curb lines and things. What are their thoughts on that? Even right next door, right, where you've got the pizza place, and what do they want to see as far as ins and outs? Inevitably, they're going to find some things to tweak, whether it be more striping, more signage, but as you said, Frank, that's why it's really important to get this in front of them. So there's nothing dramatic that we have changed. Probably the biggest change is down at the end of the project by the police station, where we just added that last little landing point on the other side of Old Colony. Pretty minor, but we realized that they won't allow you to have a ramp that stops without a crosswalk. And then once you put a crosswalk in, you have to put a landing point on the other side. Other than that, it's pretty much what you guys have seen. Unless there's specific questions, I don't see a need to kind of walk through it in detail on this call.
Can I have a motion to send the current preliminary design for Shore Road to DOT by BSC?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Frank. And the second?
I'll second.
Oh, Jim got it.
Jim, all in favor, any discussion? All in favor.
Aye.
There you go.
Thank you very much. We'll get those out probably tomorrow.
It does look like, even with some modifications, there's not going to be money to make deals with business owners on 156 for signage. They're just,
Well, it is what it is. And, I think that everybody's got to look at this thing from a practical standpoint. The business owners want the sidewalks. They've expressed to me that this is going to be a good thing for them, connecting everybody from a walking standpoint. So you know what? They got to put some skin in the game too.
well, and the other thing, Kurt or Frank, that I think makes sense, it came up, I forget who brought it up in our last meeting, something about, maybe you did, about how we get attractive signage on Shore Road. Maybe in a way it's the best option to get the business owners to talk to each other and find some kind of look that they feel comfortable with, dressing up their skin, if you will, as opposed to just moving their existing ugly signs back.
Well, the existing sign may not be able to move back for zoning reasons. So there may be a new opportunity for us to look at this from another holistic standpoint. Maybe the commission could meet with the business owners and say, okay, we have to correct the signage issue. You have to move it back. Let's look at this thing from a group activity, so to speak, and maybe we can help you out with that somewhere down the line. So
I think just the fact that we're talking about it with zoning is a huge help to them, because you talked to our zoning enforcement officer. I believe he said, I did too last week, and he was very clear with me. This is our new guy, Dan Beret. He said that his understanding is that their signs are only grandfathered if they go right back where they were. And so moving them even minimally would be an issue, but they are not really grandfathered to move them out of the state right away. So,
Sort of, I'm sorry, it's a little off topic, but I think I do want to stress that the trend is towards the LED signs. And because of the precedent with Citgo, I wouldn't be surprised if the owners, Rooney's, Teddy's, want to have some kind of illuminated LED aspect to their signage, and we should really decide whether we have any kind of say in that whatsoever. If we make them move their sign, that may be what they come up with, and we're going to have a very different look for Shore Road than we do now, which may be even worse.
We also have a new zoning enforcement officer who doesn't play fancy free with the regulations. So I think that we have a better shot at making this thing reasonable rather than the LED. I agree with you 100%, Jim. LED signs are not the route to go, but we might be able to work something out with all the groups to come up with a coordinated look, maybe.
Yeah, I think just having our commitment to work with them has got to be. Okay, all right, so we're getting near the end of our time slot here. I forgot, I lost my agenda with all this paper, sorry. So it kind of, just in summary, it kind of looks like Hartford Avenue, we agreed on the 5-foot sidewalk. It does sound like, for budget reasons, we're not going to be able to afford the monolithic look. And still have enough to do the necessary driveway work that we have to do. Does look like with the changes that we've implemented, we stretched the budget from 1 week, which is good. Hopefully that trend will continue when we hear back from DOT. If we find some deal breakers, we may have to revisit our plan here and identify what priorities we have on Hartford Avenue. I know Jim indicated his priority part, and we're going to have that discussion when we hear back from DOT. I guess we'll put off our community outreach plan. And Kurt, how long do you think we should wait to hear from DOT?
Yeah, that's a great, may I share my screen? I have our updated schedule. So I was looking at that, and certainly that, as we learned from the previous project, the DOT review process can sometimes be lengthy depending on how busy they are. And another serious concern I have is the fact that our contact at District 2 has been just flat out unresponsive. And that really has me very nervous. That's a big reason I want to get these plans down there. So on my screen, here's our schedule updated to today's meeting. If you notice, we're approaching the end of our final design process. Now, Hartford Avenue, I'm very comfortable with if the committee confirms today, and I think I just heard you say this, Mary Jo, that we're going to go with the 5-foot with the grass strip. We can get that done extremely quickly. So I'm not worried about Hartford Avenue. Keep in mind, Hartford Avenue does require a final review from Craig Babowitz as part of the connectivity grant process. So part and parcel to that, if Shore Road is going to be part of the project, likewise, he will need to also have that to review. It is possible, depending on the timing between the two segments of the project, Hartford Avenue, Shore Road, that we could have a conversation with Craig and say, look, Hartford Avenue is done. Can we send it to you and at least get your feedback on that? Because of the Shore Road piece and the non-responsiveness of DOT, I am very concerned about schedule. I think we should almost start thinking at this point about what our options are, meaning if DOT takes a month to review Shore Road and then we make revisions and then send it back to them and they take another month, that's going to really hurt us. So I think at this point, we should start to think of some of those longer term contingencies, things such as we put this out to bid, and if DOT delays things, Hartford Avenue sidewalk gets built in the spring. We know that it's going to be a very quick project, so maybe it gets built in the spring before the summer season, and then Shore Road has a little less pressure on it in that regard, being a state right of way. Maybe that can still proceed through the summer. Or so I'm just throwing these ideas out there because I am so concerned about the unknown with the DOT review, both in terms of timing and what they're going to come back with.
We can speculate forever. Let's get it out there. Let's get some
Yeah.
answers and take it from there. Really, till our next meeting.
I think that's
To have some thoughts in there, but I don't want to go too far in the speculation category.
Yeah, I agree. So is it the committee's direction that I should modify the design of Hartford Avenue to include the grass strip? Because I can get that all done and then literally finalize the Hartford Avenue design so that I can send a final deliverable while we have this bit of time here while DOT reviews Shore Road.
This is Mary Jo. I really appreciate the committee going over where we started to where we're at, and I'm personally I'm personally disappointed the budget didn't fall out the way I had envisioned, but given what we're looking at, I don't see how we can afford what I think would be cleaner, more attractive as a monolithic sidewalk. So I don't see how we can afford the strip. I just don't see how we can do it. That being said, if we get deal breakers from the state, I reserve the option of going back because I don't want to return $400,000.
I agree with you there. So,
Yeah, I agree with you, Mary Jo. I think we go with the low cost estimate that Kurt has been given us, and if we go out to bid and we do find that the bids are coming in lower, like Craig Babowitz had said, we obviously can add in. We could go back to revise. Kurt, correct? I mean, if it looks like, hey, we can afford to put in the stamped concrete, it's a simple, design change on your end. It's already kind of there, right? I mean, we're not really,
Yes,
not
it would
reinventing
get
the wheel.
Yep. It could get revised, certainly.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Mary Jo. Like, we can go ahead as is now to at least get, the state to sign off on Hartford Avenue, and then once we go out to bid, we can make some changes if we find that we're saving more money, so we can utilize that whole 400,000.
yeah, I think that I agree with you, Mary Jo. Let's get the bare bones design done, and while we're waiting for Hartford for Shore Road to come back to us, and if there's any surprises with Shore Road, we'll have to deal with them then. If there aren't, then we can just move across and finish up Shore Road. We have to go out to bid. When we go out to bid, we need to go out to bid as a whole project. Whether the construction company does it in 2 phases or not, there's an economy of scale here, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of that from a construction standpoint. So I agree.
Okay, would you see adding a monolithic 4 as an add alternate?
I don't want to put Kurt through a bunch of exercises here until we get the Shore Road piece of the puzzle taken care of. Let's see if we find any surprises there. I mean, I'd love to have it. All of this stuff is great, but I'm about the numbers here and the best bang for our buck. So if you put together the package on Hartford Avenue, with the bare bones, Kurt, and as long as Shore Road comes back reasonable, then we're all set. we could always add alternate onto Hartford Avenue at some point in time. If the construction company thinks they could do it, then that's great. You know, with understanding they got 400,000.
Yeah, I think that would be obviously more beneficial than having to, at 10 years, 15 years down the road, adding, you know, impervious pavers or whatever. I think it would be nice if we could do it all at once. So, okay, so I guess I need a motion that for BSC to design Hartford Avenue without the monolithic sidewalk. Without the monolithic, or was
The grass strip.
yeah, without the monolithic floor, that leaves the grass strip.
I'll make that motion too.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor is unanimous. Is there anything else I need to give you, Kurt?
No, that's good. So based on that, what we will do is we will bring Hartford Avenue to a final design with the goal of putting together a package that gets sent to Craig Babowitz for his review. And then one thing I think it is important to note, because I've had such limited communications with him. Do we have something in writing from DOT, I guess, from him that says these grant monies can be used for Shore Road?
That was part of the original grant application.
Okay. Okay. Just checking. I was thinking about it when Eric was talking, when he mentioned the DOT review and the ad alternate. Okay, that's good.
You know what I'll do, Kurt, is review everything I have received from Bonnie to make sure I didn't overstate the issue, but I'll take a look at it just to confirm that.
Okay.
This call.
And what I will do is we'll get the plans revised very quickly here. And then I will email you, Mary Jo, kind of with the status. Okay, the plans are done, you know, and that way, if you want to distribute them, we don't necessarily have to have a meeting, because at this point you've kind of all seen what it looks like. But before I send them to Craig, I will touch base with you just in case we do need to have a quick meeting or something to go over them. And we're going to try to do that very quickly. I'm going to try to actually get those wrapped up, you know, this week or very early next week.
Okay. When do you think you'd like to meet again, committee?
You know, at this point, it's probably best that we meet once we hear back from DOT. So I don't know. I believe me, I wish I did know.
We could schedule, you know, if we have to change it, we could, but at least we can get it on everybody's schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking it might need to be after the July 4th holiday. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yes, definitely. I, to be honest with you, based on what I've seen from DOT, they're gonna hang on to this thing for a month. I hate to say that, but I'm just so discouraged at the lack of response. That I'm almost looking at things as worst case scenario with them now. So I would recommend.
When will you have an indication? I mean, I have no problem going to Devin. He's ranking member of the Transportation Committee. You know, if we need to put pressure on these guys, we'll put the pressure on them wherever we need to, but I need to know what's reasonable.
Yeah, I think a good trigger point, Frank, is getting them the package. That will go out by email and print copy. I think once that happens, and in my transmittal to them, I'll say, please confirm receipt of this package. And please give me an indication so I may pass it on to the town of Old Lyme, and I'll CC Craig Babowitz and everything on that email. Mary Jo, I'll CC you. So to be very clear that we want to hear back from them that A, yes, we are confirming receipt, and B, give us 2 weeks to review this. If we don't hear anything from that email, in my opinion, that's the time to raise the red flag that as a municipality in their district, you're submitting a set of plans asking for a review as part of their process. If there is no response to that request, that's time to say, wait a second. So
If you'd like me to give it a shot too, I'll be happy to. Just a friendly email or from the town.
you know what could be very helpful? I like that idea. Once we do send this package, and again, you'll get copied, Craig will get copied, there will then be an email chain. It could be that you chime in on behalf of the town of Old Lyme with something like you're saying that, and I like that idea. And then that way they know, look, it's just not me as the lousy consultant, right? It's the town asking or we appreciate and that kind of thing. I think that's a good strategy, because then if we still get no response, come on, right? The gloves are off to use a worn out statement at that point.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want to go ahead and schedule a potential meeting for July 6th? That's a Monday. Maybe we
might as well put that in there as a fail safe, and then if we don't need it, we can cancel it, but at least we'll have it on the books.
Yeah.
Yep. We have a Board of Selectmen meeting at 7:30. So, I mean, we thought we want to schedule a virtual like we are today, or do you think we'd like to try to meet in person, in which case it would probably have to be after business hours?
The virtual works out for me today. I mean, want to do that on the 6th, that's fine, 1 o'clock.
Is that okay with you, Jim and Eric?
I'm sorry, the 6th was what day of the week?
It's a Monday.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, I'll book us for another virtual meeting. Thank you, guys. Then the last piece of news, could I get someone to move the minutes from June 15th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 15, 2020.
Have a second?
Well, I have a couple of comments on it.
Yep, but are you seconding?
I'll second with the comments.
Now we have discussion.
Under item 3, pretty minor. Under item 3 on page 1, second paragraph, this estimate was based on the basic improvements. I think this estimate is based on the improvements. Get rid of the word basic, because our estimate was way beyond just basic improvements.
Hold on a second. Okay.
Next item is under estimate for Hartford Avenue, 303,000, 5-foot monolithic concrete sidewalk with 2.5 stamped concrete band and concrete curb.
Okay. I thought that was part of the monolithic. Okay. Sorry.
Well, actually, the curb is you have the concrete band, which is part of the initial pour, and then there's the curb itself, which is part of the initial pour. So it all depends on how many pieces are part of that one pour.
Okay.
The way I understand it. Next item is on significant cost savings on Hartford Avenue, ? Halfway down through the second page.
Uh-huh.
I think that the only thing that I would like to add to that, my comments on this item number 2, was if the homeowner wants to strip, it said it would be easier expense. And something to the fact that cost savings are needed to complete the shore road portion of the project. I think I was really focused on that cost savings because of that.
I think that is basically what you were trying to get across it. Yep. So I don't have any problem with adding that.
That's it for me.
Okay. Any other discussion or concerns?
No.
Okay. I guess with those changes, may I have a vote to approve those, the minutes with those changes?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Thank you. It's unanimous with those changes. Thank you, guys. And then I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jim. 2:55. Okay, Eric, you got it. All in discussion and all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys, very, very much. Appreciate it.
Good 4th of July,
Great
everybody.
to see everybody.
Talk to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I know.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.